of policies do we need, for SSE, and what would be the elements of a supportive system, for instance, for implementing SSE?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, creating an enabling environment of legal and conducive legal and policy frameworks is a critical element to have SSE be sustainable and to reach scale for its members. And the other aspect, as you mentioned in the question, is strengthening the building blocks of support institutions, whether these are government or SSE institutions in the financing realm, in the education realm, and other arrangements like accompaniment and mentorship and incubators for these units. When we talk of an SSE policy, we are talking about an umbrella policy that covers the different type of organizations, so they can hang on that. And framework laws and policies around SSE include, they have been emerging around the world, especially in Latin America and Europe, but also in Africa. Djibouti, Cameroon, Tunisia have passed these framework laws recently. Ecuador, Costa Rica, Mexico, Brazil has them. When we talk of an SSE, what are some of the objectives of these framework laws that are emerging? It's recognizing the SSE as a compilation of these economic units that share these same values and principles, consolidating the different networks of SSE actors, and giving power to producers and workers that are members of these networks, and encouraging a boom, a renaissance of these SSE units with an eye for strengthening the resilience in the local economies and communities. There are, of course, separate laws beyond these SSE framework policy that govern the different type of units that would fall under SSE. In fact, on cooperatives, there are many different laws depending on the type. There could be laws on agricultural co-op or financial co-op, or as I mentioned, worker co-op, social co-op, renewable energy co-op. But we see in some of our countries there will be 7, 8 co-op laws, and they actually contradict each other in terms of the governance, in terms of requirements, in terms of the number of members, etc. And so while we're thinking SSE framework law, we also need to think how to make the economic units under SSE and the laws that govern them, that regulate them, to be more harmonious and to be more modern, because like many co-op laws are coming from the 1970s and 80s. They are not really up to date, and they come even from before the international standard, like the ILO recommendation 193 on promotion of cooperatives that I mentioned. So we need these in separate laws of the SSE economic units to become more accessible and for setting them up to become more easy, because many informal economy workers or organizations do not choose to register, for instance, as co-op because it's too cumbersome. And also, you may have a nice law around co-op, and we see this in a number of countries where co-op laws were passed, and then people registered, but they didn't know how to make the co-op work, especially with respect to its democratic governance, and then they fail. So it's not enough to have the law, but it needs to come with the kind of training on its management and also financing. But just throwing financing at it is not good, and we've seen, how that can also fail in countries like yours, Chris, in South Africa. And there is also this need for the new, as I mentioned, new forms emerging, and the law usually, runs after it. If the reality happens, and then like worker co-ops have been there in Japan for 25 years, and they just got their law, or this worker ownership that I was mentioning about in the case of failed enterprises. Has happened in Argentina in 2001 during the financial crisis but then the law came much later. In West Africa, I mentioned mutual societies, benefit societies are very prominent, but their law is starting from, maybe a decade ago. So the law usually plays catch up with the reality. But I think by creating this awareness and international definitions and good practices, we can assist in and facilitate these institutions not to exist in a legal or political vacuum, and overcome their challenges and make their life a bit more easy. With the social entrepreneurship the laws, there are again huge differences among countries. And we've seen that sometimes they come to us, these laws, they may say social enterprise in the title. Inside they're talking about what they're really talking about is social co-op, and then they launch it as a social economy law. So there's a lot of learning, as you said, Chris, that this still needs to be underway. We do provide at the ILO, when these social enterprise laws and policies come our way, to encourage our constituents to think bigger and more broadly in terms of SSE, social and solidarity economy policies. For instance, there is the social enterprises bill in the Philippines that is being discussed, and they are talking about social enterprise with the poor as primary stakeholder, social mission-driven organization in the form of association, single proprietorship, partnership, corporation, cooperative, people organization, or other legal form that conducts economic activities providing goods and services directly related to the primary mission of improving the well-being of the poor, basic and marginalized sectors in their living environment. So this is the social enterprise law, and we are, trying to engage to ensure that it is thought in a bigger way in the context of social and solidarity economy. When we say conducive ecosystem, we are talking about existence of support institutions, legal support or financial support or training, education services. This could be governmental entities at the national or local levels that are responsible for the implementation, activation of SSE policies, promoting and supporting SSE units. In countries where public institutions for SSE are absent, or where SSE is not recognized, there are specific government entities for the units, economic units under. So you may have a cooperative development agency, or you may have a social enterprise authority, this kind of thing. Finance can play, of course, an important role in supporting SSE units, helping it grow, fulfill the potential. It's still difficult to assess the demand for finance, first because there is a lack of data on SSE institutions, SSE units, and second, there's such a diversity of actors, as you were noting, Chris, that there is a lot of variability in terms of their sectors and size and life cycle. So there's still a lot of learning, and that's why we're doing a lot of research and consultations around it. On training, well-tailored training materials that are updated to the needs of the times are still quite sparse. When they exist, their adaptation and translation and uptake by national and local institutions and resource people can be lacking. For instance, we've been working with the SEVA Academy in adapting some of the tools that we have on cooperation, collectives, etc., from the ILO, and we know that Save Academy will own it and take care of it and disseminate it through its members these training sessions, of course, are not enough. They need to be supported by incubation, mentorship, accompaniment arrangements. These could include community-based organizations, international solidarity, of pairing up SSE experts in a given field, if it's another country. I think the model that global MBOs and WIGO use are quite similar to this ecosystem that I'm talking about. And generating scale, of course, is a big issue. And this came out from the ILO WIGO study that I was mentioning earlier. And there are different models of how to create scale. For instance, one is creating consortium. We've seen in Italy, where there's social co-ops for care provision, they stay still small. So they may be in a co-op, but they're still small. They have maybe 70 members. But if they want to bid for a local government procurement of care services for a given neighborhood, they still need to have more scale. So a number of them, of SSE units, co-op or associate, come together and bid together under a consortium model. And in fact, there are many countries now around the world where they are giving procurement priority, public procurement priority to SSE organizations, SSE units. And I think this is an important policy example to follow.